For more on the story, we're joined by the DA Shadow Health Minister, Michéle Clarke. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Firstly, when you look at these various sanctions that have been meted out against these individuals, you have different grades of warnings, demotions, pay cuts that have been implemented. Has it gone far enough?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. In my view, not at all. You know, government is anonymous for fraud, corruption, and maladministration. And this is a huge issue. I mean, this was a 150 million rand project, which this money could have been spent to upgrade public health care in order to provide better health care to the poor of the poorest in South Africa. Yet, you know, highly paid executive officials get a 12-month suspension on their salaries in terms of demotion, and you know, but still on very highly paid levels, and a slap on the wrist. I mean, what kind of message does that send to South Africans? You know, are we so rife in terms of fraud and corruption that, you know, this is how we deal with fraud and corruption? I'm not happy at all with the outcome of this investigation.
Part of what has been reported on how these processes and negotiations around, you know, the necessary disciplinary action, how that was carried out, it seems like dismissals were really an option of last resort, if we can say that they were an option at all, because in this instances, one of the officials decided to resign with immediate effect, and that's something that was accepted, but certainly she wasn't dismissed.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I'd like to know, and a set of questions I'm going to ask the Minister, is how are we going to recoup this funding? Because, I mean, if you look at the recommendations for Pillay, you know, criminal prosecution in the report was recommended, yet he gets a slap on the wrist. I mean, this sends a complete wrong message that there's no consequences for collusion or corruption within government. Pardesi gets to resign with no further consequences of signing off a 34 million rand payment order irregular and motivating it irregular to National Treasury. And you know, the crux of the matter here was, if you look further into the documentation, you know, the whole tender process was manipulated because, you know, there was a manipulation that Digital Vibes had a 5-year working experience in terms of this tender, which was not true at all. And they only had a year's valid experience. They came in at 150 million rand, where Brandwell could have supplied the exact same services at the amount of 69 million rand. So, you know, this tender was clearly manipulated in favor of ANC cadres within government.
One of the things that seemed to sway the presiding officer or chairperson on this matter was that these individuals, all these officials, were described as first-time offenders, and that there was no evidence that suggests they had benefited from the transactions.
I have to say to that report has not even served to the Health Committee as yet. And we will be insisting that report serve to the Health Committee, because the whole SIU investigation went to SCOPA, but should also come to the Health Committee for us to interrogate, because there's a lot to be interrogated in terms of this report.
What do you think the alternatives could have been here when it comes to the kinds of sanctions that they should face?
Well, you know, this happens continuously. I mean, we just have to look at all the SOEs in terms of government, Eskom, Denel, SAA, Alex Corps, and so it continues. You know, government must start taking really harsh actions against fraud and corruption, and we need to see people paying back the money, number one, and number two, we need to see some jail sentences given to people that that commit these kind of actions. I mean, it can't continue like this. I mean, it's damaging our economy, firstly, in terms of fraud and corruption. And South Africans have lost hope. South Africans want to see real action from government. And up to this stage, we have not seen any real action in terms of any fraud and corruption that's happened in government. And my big concern here too is the billions of rands government now want to implement into the NHI, and how will that be managed, in terms of regulations and transparency, if the full bill prescribes that the minister has full control over the full running and funding of NHI. So, that's another concern now. Are we going to see the same thing happening, in terms of that? So, South Africans want to see, and opposition in Parliament want to see real accountability and real action. I mean, these people should never have been allowed to just have a 12-month sanction and then be back in their cushy, well-paid jobs. Should be fired immediately.
All right, let's leave it there for tonight. DA Shadow Health Minister Michéle Clarke.